Hello and welcome to Tarot Thursday. I'm your host, Reverend Mary Hawk, and with me is Reverend Don Lewis.
Hi.
So, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us on this Thursday evening. And we want to say our hearts are with everyone in the path of Milton. There has been a lot of destruction, and people are returning home now to find out what they have left. So, you are in our thoughts and prayers.
And also the many people still recovering from Elaine.
Yes, and we don't forget everyone who's still in the process of recovering from Helene.
One of the things that I don't know if people who have not experienced this sort of thing realize is that it's not going to be a quick recovery.
No,
It's going to go on for a while.
no, because communities are absolutely devastated.
Yes. And although it seems like disaster relief is doing everything that it can, even so, it's going to take a while. I mean, there are going to be houses that need to be repaired and rebuilt, roofs that need to be fixed, infrastructure that has to be um, repaired, um, a vast amount of work to be done.
Yes.
So it's not going to be a couple of days and everything goes back to normal.
No, it's not going to be at all. And there are going to be people who will be displaced for quite some time because of it.
Yeah. And of course, not everyone has the same effects from it. Some have experienced greater loss than others, um, and some will deal with it in different ways than others. But many people dealing with a great deal right now. And Byron Ballard is doing a lot of work with disaster relief, especially around Asheville, North Carolina. And she has been asking for people who have experience with psychopomp work, that is, crossing souls into the afterlife, to be of assistance at this time, because so many have crossed at once. And this is something that they're finding themselves dealing with, in addition to all the physical things that have to be done, the spiritual work as well.
Yes. And it will be quite a process. And since it is Tarot Thursday, if you have a question for us, please go ahead and post it in chat.
And if you don't have a question, you can always just say hello.
Hey, Renee.
Hello, Renee.
And yes, we can do a general reading for you. Happy to do so. Hope you're doing well this evening. Okay, so the first card I've got for you, Renee, is the Two of Swords. So this is a partnership. It usually means a business partnership or an alliance rather than a friendship. And it may be temporary in nature, but be looking for someone to be helping you get things done. Then I've got the Ten of Lamps. So this card is talking about perfecting your magic, your spirituality, and being in a position to use those things to better your life. And then finally, I've got the Tower, which is, is transformation. So I would look for some major changes in your life in the next few weeks.
And the cards that I have drawn are the Hanged Man, the Nine of Cups, and the Moon. And the Hanged Man is waiting. It's waiting for transformation to occur, waiting for change to happen. And it says, be patient. The things are taking their form, but you have to let them take the amount of time they need. Also, in the Tarot of Hecate, the Hanged Man is Odin. And this is relevant in the sense that at present we have the Odin's Eye as a second moon around the Earth. And so I would say that the amount of time that this card is referencing waiting is probably also the amount of time that we have that moon, which is about 2 months. So be patient, let things take the time they need to develop, and be clear on what you want. We have the Nine of Cups. The Nine of Cups is the wish card. And the wish card says to you to be careful what you wish for, because you will get what you wish for. That means what you focus on. That might be what you desire. It might be what you fear. Make sure you put your focus on your desire and not the fear, and that will draw it to you. Finally, we have the Moon. The Moon is magic. And also, during this time of 2 moons is kind of relevant in that way as well. The Moon is using the higher powers of your soul to affect your life. And so it's saying, be clear on what you want and manifest it. Do not simply wait for things to happen, but draw them into being. And there you go.
So I hope that's helpful, Renee. And hello to Fluffy in the chat room. Good to see you, Fluffy.
Hello, Fluffy.
And hello to Joe and Baxter. And yes, we can do a general reading for you, Fluffy. Tell Baxter I think he's drinking too much coffee for a pupper his size. All right, so the first card I've got for you is the Prince of Swords. And this is talking about, sometimes called selfishness, but really it's making sure your own needs are met. So while you will do everything in the world to help other people, yes, I know you, be sure you're doing what you need to do to take care of yourself physically, spiritually, and mentally. So be sure you are doing what you need to do for yourself. And then I've got the Six of Swords. Now this card would indicate a journey. Could be physical, but my sense for you, it's more spiritual, or it's relating to the journey you're taking with your new projects. And finally, I've got the Ten of Lamps. And yes, I shuffled. But the Ten of Lamps talks about perfecting your magic and your spirituality, and then being in a good position to use them in the world.
The cards I have drawn are the Five of Swords, the Seven of Coins, and the Prince of Coins. The Five of Swords says that you may be experiencing conflict in the near future. This could be conflict with other people, conflict with situations, or it could simply be conflict within yourself. But you're going to find conflict around going forward. Part of that comes from the Seven of Coins, which says that you have a number of options in front of you that you are looking at, a number of possible ways of handling things, a number of possible ways to go forward, but you're not clear on which one you want yet. And that could be the source of the conflict. Finally, we have the Prince of Coins, which says, all of this will take its shape, but it will take it slowly. It's like a garden growing. If you watch it every moment, you won't see anything changing, but if you check every couple of days, you will see change. You have to be patient, let it take its time, and let it grow at its own pace. And if you do that, you will get
Drum roll.
the Princess of Lamps. And the Princess of Lamps is using your abilities for yourself, using your abilities to create the situations you want, to create the life that you want. Particularly magical abilities, psychic abilities, but all abilities, really. It is using these things to improve your life and having a focus on that. So in making your choice between the different options that you're facing, you want to use that as your direction to make sure that it's doing what you need it to do. And if you do that, you'll be happy with the outcome. And there you go.
All right. And Renee says, Mary, this is the second time in 2 weeks I have received the tower. I thought I remembered drawing the tower for you previously. So buckle up. Change is coming. And does anyone else have a question for us? If you do, go ahead and post it in chat. And I'll talk a little bit about Nashville Pagan Pride Day. I mentioned leading up to it, we did have it last Saturday. Reverend Don did teach tarot.
No, not
tarot.
Astrology.
Astrology. I've slept since then.
And I totally entertained that audience.
He did. We had a great turnout, around 1,000 people. We did have a few protesters that we mostly ignored, and they gave up and went away. We had 3 rituals. Our entertainers were wonderful. Our presenters were wonderful. And I am proud of this. And I'm going to look up the numbers on my phone to be sure I get it right. So we raised our... Okay. I'm getting to it. So we collected 394 pounds of food for Second Harvest Food Bank. And we collected $576 in cash for Second Harvest. So.
Good job.
And we also had a couple of groups doing collections for hurricane relief. It was just for Helene at that time. And I don't actually have the numbers for those right now. But we did have a great time, and we were able to help other people.
Yes, indeed.
And now we'll take 2 weeks off and start planning next year's Nashville Pagan Pride Day.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing, isn't it? As soon as you've done one, you have to start planning the next one.
Yes, we've already set our follow up meeting actually. So, all right. Well, if you have a question for us, go ahead and post it.
And if not, we will sit here and chatter at you.
Yes. And what is this channel exactly? Okay, you're looking at the Pagan World TV channel, Pickles the Dog, and we run on Twitch. You're on our Twitch channel. We run various programming related to divination, Wicca, paganism, and other interesting topics. Tonight we're doing tarot readings.
Yes. We we do a variety of things. Tomorrow night we will have the Crystal Web monthly 11th ritual.
Yes.
We do Sabbat rituals. We do Midday with Reverend Don. And we have been known by various names over the years, from Magic TV to Pagan World TV to Corellian TV to Divination TV. And yeah, that's all us.
Yes.
And the other things that we do your daily tarot reading.
Yes. I post a daily tarot at 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern. Of course, you can go back and watch it at any point during your day if that's not a good time for you.
And we also do the Best of Reverend Don's vlog,
Yes.
which goes up at 5 a.m. Central Time each day. And Reverend Don's vlog is a series that I did for 10 years because our this channel is 19 years old, and we have been doing this for 19 years. And so the vlog has a great many back episodes that we'll be airing as best ofs, and that's happened a few times over the years. We're also affiliated with Corellian Publishing, and the vlog has been turned into 4 books called Reverend Don's Books of Questions, each of which contains 100 questions from the vlog. And that's what the vlog was mostly about. It started out, the vlog started out to be a slice of my life, but my life is boring. And so instead, I started answering people's questions. And, we talked about so many questions during the 10 years of the vlog. And today I do Midday with Reverend Don, which is a half-hour program. The vlog was much shorter and dealt with just one question a day as a general rule. And, it was everything from questions about psychism, questions about paganism, questions about ritual, questions about aliens, questions about mermaids, werewolves, you name it, someone asked a question about it. And some of them were really quite profound.
Yes.
And so if you're interested in these things, it is, I think, a very good resource.
It is.
Um,
So that's
Yeah.
what this channel is all about. Although I think Pickles has left us at this point. Pickles said, well, good luck with that.
Thank you, Pickles.
We appreciate
We have
it.
had good luck with it.
We have. And if anyone has a question for us, please go ahead and post it in chat. Because we can sit here and talk forever.
I imagine there's a good chance that we have a smaller audience than usual this evening, for
Yes.
obvious reasons.
Yes.
So we can't be surprised by that, but we will keep you entertained until you decide you have more questions you want to ask.
Yes, we will. So
Um, well, what shall we talk about while we're waiting?
Ah, well, why don't we pick which one of your uh, Lord Don's Library of Horror episodes you want to run for Saturday
Oh,
night?
oh, that's right. We have a number of those.
Yes.
Um,
Hi, Aura. Yes, we are drawing cards for people. If you post a question, we will each pull 3 cards, more or less, on your topic.
let's see some of the films that we did Carnival of Souls
And Metropolis.
and Metropolis, Son of um, I want to say Son of Guanji, but I don't think
And now
that
I
was
think
it.
it was Inagi.
Yeah, but you know the one I mean. We did The Ghoul with Boris Karloff, which was a good one.
I think that was my favorite. But we have a question here
Yay.
from Aura. What specific energy would be best for me to focus on and want me to know as we move into the dark of the year? All right. That is a good question to ask right now. Yeah, that spirit wants me to know about as we move into the dark of the year. And I'm going to keep shuffling over my table here so I don't have to dive under it. Well, the first card I've got for you is the Queen of Swords. Yes, it's me. When Reverend Dawn did the Kickstarter for the Infinite Tarot, one of the options was to commission a card.
Yes.
So I asked him to draw me as the Queen of Swords because this card has been representing me for nearly 30 years now. So the Queen of Swords says to review things and ask yourself what worked before and what didn't work before, and move forward based on that. I've got the Nine of Wands, which is indicating a period of waiting. So you may feel like you're stuck and things are developing slowly. I would use that time for meditation and reflection. And then suddenly things are going to start to move very quickly for you with the Eight of Wands. And I'm going to pull one more card. And I've got the Two of Swords, which suggests that when things are moving quickly, you will find an ally or a business partner, probably not a friend in this case, but someone that will further you along your path.
And the cards I have drawn are Justice, the Four of Lamps, and the Three of Lamps. And lamps have to do with spirituality, which is kind of at the crux of this question. And of course, Justice is one of the major arcana. Justice begins by saying the more that you put into this period, the more you're going to get out of it. If you feel a tendency to pull back, you'll get less. If you push forward, you'll get more. And part of what that means is if you feel overwhelmed by what's happening, you can pull back and slow it down. Or conversely, you can push forward and things will increase. The Four of Lamps says that this is a time of seeking guidance, a time of looking for where you're going. And I don't know if that's exactly Spirit saying you should focus on that, but you will focus on that. And it's followed by the Three of Lamps, which is working with others. So I think that what I would say in answer to this question is a big part of this is working with one or more other people, working in community, working not just on your own, but in concert with other forces. And if I were to identify one energy that Spirit is pointing out, I would say that is it. To work in partnership and or group. I'm going to roll one more card for you, however. We call this the Bryan card. It's that extra card we sometimes have to draw. And I've drawn the King of Lamps. So another lamp. So still a focus on spirituality. The King of Lamps is meditation. Connecting to your higher self, being led by your higher self. And so it's saying that while the emphasis here is on working with others, you also have to make sure you continue working with yourself and that you're working from your highest good. At the same time, you're working in concert with others. And so there you go.
So I hope that is helpful, Aura.
And for those who are not familiar with the Tarot of Hecate, it is a 100-card tarot deck, sometimes more. It has a number of expansion decks that in the form of the Infinite Tarot can make it pretty infinite. But the actual Tarot of Hecate itself, which is the basis of the Infinite Tarot, is 100 cards and includes an additional suit, the Suit of Lamps, in addition to the traditional minor arcana suits and a number of extra major arcana cards. So as you see us reading, you'll see those cards come up. And if you were wondering where they're from, this is where they come from. And a lot of that comes from Lady Bitterwind, the former first elder of the Corellian tradition, now among the beloved ancestors, who was a tarologist in her own right. Greatly influenced me to create the Tarot of Hecate, and it illustrated a number of her points of view as well as my own. She felt that to be truly complete, the tarot needed to come up to 100 cards. She felt numerologically it was more appropriate. She knew that in its origin, tarots had often been much larger than modern tarots have come to be. And she just felt that 100 cards would be ideal. And that's how the Tarot of Hecate was born back in the 1980s.
And Aura says, thank you very much. It's very helpful. I felt what you were sharing with me.
Wonderful.
I'm so glad you find it useful, Aura. And if anyone else has a question for us, go ahead and post it.
So we were talking about the Library of Horror.
Yes.
And it was the Son of Ingagi that I was thinking of.
Yes.
And the Son of Ingagi was one of my favorite of these films, but also definitely one of the more B film offerings. But fascinating. And I think we definitely should include it sometime in the season, but I think the Ghoul is a good one to start with.
Okay.
And we must include Carnival of Souls, but I would say
absolutely.
Near the end of the month would be best for that one, because Carnival of Souls is widely considered one of the creepiest films ever made.
You're welcome, Renee. She says,
Oh, yeah.
Thank you both for my reading.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun doing the Library of Horror, and we've talked about doing more of them, and who knows, maybe we will. The problem with the Library of Horror is in order to do it, we have to find public domain films, and there are a good number of them, but that doesn't mean every copy of them is equally in the public domain. Because just because the film is in the public domain doesn't always mean all of its parts are.
And for those of you who never saw any of Reverend Don's Library of Horror, it's not just us reshowing old horror movies. It's Reverend Don commenting on them, especially when they touch on magic or paganism.
Yes, indeed. And that was the original idea of the Library of Horror, to look at films that particularly had a relevance to paganism in one way or another. The Ghoul being a perfect example of that, because religious elements are very strong in this film, particularly Egyptian revivalism of the 20s and 30s. Um, would we call him the protagonist? The Boris Karloff character is a devotee of the ancient Egyptian gods in rural England in the 1930s. And it's a very interesting story, very interestingly put forward. And one of the things about it that makes it interesting is the relatively respectful way they approach this subject matter. I
Mm-hmm.
often talk about the fact that my favorite horror film is the 1932 Mummy. And one of the reasons for that is that there again, they approach that issue of ancient Egyptian religion very respectfully when all is said and done, and very much as its own thing. The other thing about the Mummy that is I think makes it head and shoulders above many other horror films is, it has the maiden in distress at the center of the film and her stalwart boyfriend. But in the end of the film, and the film's from 1932, I don't think it's a spoiler. But at the end of the film, the stalwart boyfriend does not rescue the heroine. He is locked out of the room while she is facing down the monster on her own, and overcomes the monster on her own with the help of the goddess Isis, which, again, is part of why I say it approaches its pagan subject matter very respectfully. Arguably, Isis is the final heroine of the film. It treats the Egyptian deities as fully extant and part of the story. And while there are here and there a couple of regressive elements, they're not on the part of the Egyptian characters, but on the part of the Europeans, who don't seem to totally understand what they're doing, which I think is rather brilliant to have written into the script that way. And I don't think it's an accident. So I highly recommend The Mummy. If you, I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. And The Ghoul, although not as good a film, has many of these same qualities that make it very memorable.
Yeah, the only one who seems to out and out disapprove of his religion is the country parson, vicar, whoever
Mm-hmm.
he was.
Yeah. And he turns out to be more than he appears. But you'll have to see the film to understand what we mean by that. But it's an interesting film in
It
its own
is.
right, but especially from the point of view of paganism in the 1930s. You may have had people telling you that all of this started in the 1950s. That is not true. Paganism was a big deal in the early part of this century. And you see it very strongly in films like this. And one of the things that I often object to is that we seem to want to make unnecessary divisions in our history um, when we examine it that disconnect us from one another. But that the history of the pagan movement goes back hundreds of years, and when you look at it that way, it's indisputable. It's when people try to introduce minute divisions that it gets chopped down into smaller periods. I do not think that you can really understand modern paganism well if you don't understand hermetics and alchemy, which was very much a spiritual movement and heavily pagan, very much similar to what we teach today. Once you separate it from its mythology and and look at its actual mythology, um, or the various druidic revivals, the Druids of Yola Morgannog, um, and various other druidic orders from several centuries ago, some of which are still going. Um, these things are all very important to how we are where we are. And they aren't really separate from each other, but we tend to make them separate. And several different Egyptian pagan revivals that have occurred, um, classical Greco Roman revivals, which have been almost constant. Um, Thomas, Thomas Merton, who was a prominent figure in the 1600s in North America, who was a devotee of the goddess Venus. But you would never think that to read many people's histories of modern paganism. But it's pretty well attested, even though there are people who try to represent him in different ways. But it's pretty well attested. Um, one of the interesting things, I lived in Salem for a while, and one of the things I learned there is at the very same time the Salem witch trials were happening, there was all kinds of metaphysics happening in the community. Several of the judges were alchemists, something we would link to witchcraft in the modern mind. They did not, at least in the way they were using the definition. But there were also classical revivalists. The Crown and Shield family, who were very wealthy, had a practice of classical revivalism going on their estates, and no one said a word to them because they were very wealthy. And it wasn't considered the same thing because attitudes have changed. Why it wouldn't be considered the same thing, I don't know, but it's right there in the records. But then you'll find people who try to tell you all of this started in the 1920s or the 1950s. I've even seen people try to say it started in the 1990s.
Really?
I've seen people try that. I've actually seen people try to say it started in the early 2000s, which speaks to how poor human memory can be. I remember when I was a child, these things were very popular, arguably more mainstream than mainstream in different ways than we've seen them since. I remember a number of television programs that touched on it, including one called The Sixth Sense that I remember very strongly, if not very clearly. And you could buy metaphysical books in your local supermarket.
Those little pamphlets.
Yes.
I remember those.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't allowed to touch them.
My mother happily bought them. And I learned numerology from one of those, my first exposure to it. And my mother happily bought it for me because she was encouraging all of these studies because she was from the same tradition I am. And I became Correllian because of my mother. I was raised with it and brought into it very early. Man, Myth, and Magic. Fascinating series. As I recall, we were buying it in our local Kroger. And it was in the magazine shelf with all the other magazines. And I don't think, I guess you would see that today, because I have to say that the last time I went to CVS, I saw two different magazines on witchcraft. One, I think, may have been National Geographic. The other was independent. And among my various keepsakes is that issue of National Geographics that examined witchcraft and included my photo in it, which was something I never thought I would see, but I'm quite proud of that.
Yeah, and we do need to pause at this point for a word from our sponsors.
Yay, sponsors!
We love our sponsors.
And there they are, coming now.
that was Equinox Learning Hub. We really appreciate them. And now our other sponsor.
Ready to unlock the secrets of the universe? Join me, Reverend Don Lewis, for my metaphysical and magic auctions at Gaia Thrift at whatnot.com. Discover fascinating artifacts, mystical crystals, and rare and unusual books that could change your life. Don't miss this chance to bring a little magic into your world. Reverend Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions, where the extraordinary can become yours.
And thank you to Reverend Don.
And our next Metaphysical and Magic auction is scheduled for Sunday evening. And I'm hoping to have some really interesting things for you on Sunday evening.
And at this point, I'm going to add that if you would like to schedule a reading with either of us, you may do so at divinationtv.com, your destination for all things divination.
And it is coming up on the liturgical new year, so a wonderful time to get a reading. And
Yes.
So if you're interested in the reading, we are both available. Reverend Bryan is available. And also, if you would be interested in becoming a sponsor of our programming, you can write to us at
divinationtv1@gmail.com.
And you can supply your own commercial, or we can make one for you.
So, and does anyone else have a question for us? Does not look like it. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up for the evening. If you would do a prayer for us, please.
Certainly. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we relish this walk we walk together. We ask you to help us to stay connected to our higher selves and to receive the guidance of Spirit in our lives through intuition and divination and oracular work and whatever means that it comes to us from. And during this particular time of 2 moons, when these things are particularly highlighted, we ask you to help us to keep our eyes open to all the messages that we may receive. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love, and knowing you are always with us, still from respect, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. And may you be blessed now and always.
Blessed be, and I will pause to remind you that we will be holding our crystal web ritual tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. On whatever channel you are watching this program, you'll be able to join us for that. So please consider joining us. Thanks for joining us tonight. Check out my daily tarot reading tomorrow morning. And blessed